Hey guys, Loco here with my second favorite caster. My first one is Jad, and you guys he went somewhere else.
Jed's dead. Jed's gone and gone.
I guess you'll have to be my favorite now.
There you go. I like it. Yeah. We're moving on up.
All right, let's start with some of the bottom tier teams because I think that's where it's really interesting. Right now we have 4 teams kind of locked for playoffs. I can't even say locked for FlyQuest anymore because they lost yesterday. But TSM, TL, Cloud9, and FlyQuest, they look pretty solid, and we feel like they're going to be in playoffs. Who's the next 2 teams for you?
I'd say the next two for me are probably Golden Guardians and CLG. Golden Guardians started 0-4, so their record isn't super impressive, but they're 5-3 in their last 8. And I feel like they have been a team that's steadily improving. And when you even look at the quality of opponents in that, they have one loss to TL, who is 10-1, and they have the one loss, I guess it was to Clutch, where they did the Yasuo bot, and their Yasuo bot just got super slammed. He took MR runes, and Piglet absolutely blasted him. So that one felt like, okay, this one thing went really bad. But as a whole, I feel like Golden Guardians have really improved a lot. CLG also, I do feel like they are improving. And if they have more flexibility with how they're playing around top lane, like I have felt like for a long time that they pretty much could only play essentially team fight style, tank top / jungle, and that's how they had to win. But if they have Jax, if they can bring out different picks like that and also succeed, I think that they're going to be like a much tougher team to draft around too.
So what about teams kind of outside of the playoffs? Which one surprised you the most that they're down there?
It's got to be 100 Thieves, right? And not even just in their losses, but in their wins. Like yesterday, I think was such a disappointing game from them. Was super brutal. Today, it actually just felt like they rolled over and died. Like they had Victor, they had Ezreal, they have Zac, they have all these champions that I think are quite strong in the late game, and they didn't contest anything. Like they're on Baron, it felt like they could at least trade Baron for Elder. They don't do that. They try to contest the Elder, then they just give up the Baron. They don't fight either of their inhibitors. It just seemed like you're watching a team that is not talking to each other at all, and it's just 5 players waiting to lose the game.
Outside looking in, can you go a little bit deeper into their problems? What exactly is going wrong for them? Because they have a roster, theoretically, it should be an easy playoff team. You got Bang, you got Aframu, you got Someday. You have 3 top-tier players, and Onda and Huhi are still good enough players. This should be a playoff team. Like, what is going on with this team?
That's why I think it's a lot about the fact that they're not actually working together as a team. Their communication seems really bad. I mean, one of the things that I can definitely point to is I think how Onda and Someday are actually working together. I think that they have been so poor in their coordination. When you look at the game yesterday, the Riven J4 game, Onda's flashing forward and looking for an engage as somebody's backing off against Huni playing 10 Karma. You look at the Jace game from last week or the week before where they play Jace Olaf top into a Malphite. That was, I guess, against Echobox. And, they try to do an early dive and they're completely botching their coordination. Like, I don't know if it's they're having trouble understanding each other, or it's a language thing, or it's just people are just looking at the game so differently that they're expecting their teammates to do different things. But it just feels like when you do the eye test to any of their individual players, you're like, yeah, this guy's really good, this guy's really good, but they just are so poorly coordinated, and it never feels like they have the same goal in mind, kind of.
So there's a player that you really didn't believe in at the start of the season, Piglet. Clutch is doing a little bit better. Piglet's playing better. What's your thoughts on Clutch and also Piglet?
So Clutch, I mean, I don't think they're going to make playoffs, but at least it feels like they've found a bit more of a direction. So I do think that Piglet has played really well in both the Aurelia games, which was their last 2 wins, I guess. And I just think that for Piglet in particular, I have no problem with him personally or anything like that. I just think that his opinion of himself is like on one end of the scale, and where I think he's actually performing is on the other end of the scale, right? Like I think that most of the individual players in LCS are actually very good these days. And when you're trying to go through and like do a tier list of any players, there's not anyone that you're like, yeah, this guy just sucks ass. Like he's so much worse than everyone else. And I think that Piglet is on the lower end of a lot of the ADs, but that's because I feel that like he hasn't been as consistent when you look at his time in the LCS over the last number of years, and even bouncing back and forth to Academy. Like he has these really incredible moments, but then I think he also has moments where he's like overreaching, and especially for a marksman, when you're trying to go like a step too far, it's kind of the criticism that people used to have for Wild Turtle. You can get so punished because your team is so reliant on that consistent source of damage, right? So I almost feel like him playing some of the non-standard marksmen fits his style better, because it actually makes more sense for the Aurelia to like be R flashing into the middle of the team and doing that sort of thing, right? So I'd actually like that he's happy to play that style. I think people playing non-meta stuff is much harder for opponents to prepare for, and if it fits the way that you actually want to play the game, game, then who cares? You don't have to ever play Ezreal again. Play only like Cassio and Vladimir and Yasuo and Aurelia. I'm down for that. And I think he's looked good in those games. So I'd way rather see Clutch keep doing similar things to what they did today, where they have 3 picks that could be in any lane, right? It could be Cassio top mid bot, it could be Yasuo top mid bot, it could be Aurelia top mid bot. Like that is a really hard thing to prepare for, I think, as an opponent, and it also just suits the fact that all of those players at their best are super aggressive. When I think of Huni and Piglet and even Demonte's early games in the split, they're doing crazy shit and it's working. That's them at their best. So why not just embrace it?
Yeah. I think one of the Reddit comments said they're like a budget G2, and I think that's actually a pretty good description of them.
That's kind of harsh, but maybe a bit true. I mean, G2 plays really, really aggressively. I also think G2 can play more standard styles, and I also just think that like Caps is in a different world than Demonte, right? Caps is maybe just the best mid laner in all of NAU, period, right? A lot of the European players will tell you he's just the best European player, period, right? So I think that changes the way that you can play the game, as we've seen like how the different Fnatic even looks, right? But yeah, I mean, G2 speeds up the pace of the game and they close out games incredibly fast, and that's what Clutch should do if they want to play this style.
All right, now let's go to top of the league. We actually have C9 and TSM kind of ramping up, and they might even be able to contend with TL. How strong do you think TL's hold on first place really is, and do you see TSM and C9 toppling them during regular season, or if not, maybe in playoff?
So I think their hold on first place as far as who's the actual best team, not really standings, is somewhat tenuous, because I think that C9 has been looking more flexible, and B, I think that C9 in particular has better vision control and play around Baron than any other team in the league. Like they're so good at actually shutting out teams once they get an advantage. It feels like their whole team is in your jungle, they're stealing all your camps, everything is warded, and you can't even get in your own jungle to ward the Baron, which is I think something that when you compare how they have played that out, especially when they're playing poke comps compared to how some of the other teams, feels like it's in a different league. So I feel like the fact that they have a lot of flexibility with Licorice and he can play a lot of different styles is also an advantage. But I mean, I don't think that there's any guarantee that either of these teams would kind of surpass them. TL, I think, has still looked like the most solid team overall when you look at the body of their work, and their one loss to me still feels like it wasn't them playing their style. First pick Yorick, I think, didn't play around that at all. Even some of the decision making that I talked about on some of the analyst desk segments from Smithy, where they're going to a rift when their mid laner's in base, and then they're challenging red buff when their mid laner's dead, and they have full vision of what the other team is doing and still choosing those fights. So that just seemed like that is not the Team Liquid I know, and that is not the Smithy I know. So I want to see them lose playing their style and playing a good game before I'm willing to say one of those other teams is kind of better than them.
So season's almost coming to a close, and we got MVP, Coach of the Split, Rookie of the Split. Who do you have for MVP?
Oh, it's really hard. I mean, I think a lot of people are talking about Core JJ. I think that he's a pretty solid candidate, but I honestly haven't put a tremendous amount of time into thinking about who would be my MVP. Off the top of my head, I want to say him. I think for C9, looking at someone like Licorice, I think he has been a really big standout. If I was looking at TSM, I mean, I think Bjergsen has been really stepping it up in the last couple of weeks and was dominant against Jensen, which was really impressive. Like his laning stats are really strong. So maybe those guys off the top of my head, but I'd have to really kind of think about it a lot.
How do you rate Bjergsen and Doublelift for MVP? Because these players have been good for such a long time. You kind of forget, and you're like, oh, that's Bjergsen being Bjergsen, Doublelift being Doublelift, like just carrying their team to top of the standing. That's just what they do. Do we even give them MVP for that if they do that every split?
It's really hard, and I think it depends on what your definition of MVP is, right? Some people are looking at it and they're saying, okay, how much worse is your team if you remove this player? And that's how they do it. And some people will look at it more, who had the best individual performance for that year? And I'm more in that camp. I think that it's hard to argue against, Doublelift or Bjergsen being MVP every single time. If you just say, okay, you just like remove that person from their team, how good do they do? Probably not that well. But also, as far as like the individual performance, I think for Doublelift, I think I'm willing to bet that he's not going to win MVP simply because he's laning with someone that is so damn good, and a lot of the attention is going to be on Core JJ. And anytime I think you have a team where there's multiple amazing players, they tend to cannibalize votes from each other. Yeah. A similar thing happened with TSM in the past, where it was like, I want to say it was the time Arrow one, where there was a lot of drama about Haunter not winning, but it was like Haunter got second in MVP voting, and I want to say like Bjergsen got third or something, something like that. I can't remember the exact situation, but that tends to happen, and I think that will certainly happen to TL, where they're clearly the best bot lane. You have a world champion who everyone's saying is the best support, and Doublelift everyone's saying is the best AD. So they're going to steal votes from each other, and probably neither will win.
As for a rookie of the split, I'm not sure if Broken Blade qualifies, but let's say Broken Blade qualifies. It becomes between Broken Blade and Viper. So who do you have? Because a lot of people will just straight up say Broken Blade due to him being on TSM and TSM having a lot more eyes and a lot more fans. But Viper has been quietly making his case, and I think the conversation came up a lot more when Huni ranked Viper second in his top lane tier list.
Yeah, it's interesting because for me, I guess I'm kind of on the other end of it where, I don't think Broken Blade qualifies, but even if he did, I would be much more in the camp of Viper, because I think that when I look at his individual performance, I feel like he is responsible for a lot of the wins that FlyQuest has put forward. I also feel like he's on a weaker team, so it's more impressive that he is having that level of performance. And then I look at Broken Blade and I see, okay, this is clearly a very talented player. He's very good mechanically. But I think if you were to pinpoint one person on TSM who has had the most mistakes, I would say it is Broken Blade. I think that, thinking back to some of the dives that he's tried to force, 2v1s that they have lost where he's overextending and these sorts of things have, I think, sometimes cost his team more than helped. But obviously, that is something that I think gets tempered over time, and they try to find the right balance between how aggressive do you play and how defensive you play. But Viper has been such a pleasant surprise for me, because I was not expecting a lot from FlyQuest at all. I was not expecting him to be able to stand up to a lot of the top lane names, because when you're looking across the board, yes, some of these guys haven't been performing as well this season, but when you think about all the top laners, guys like Hanser, and then you have, Impact, you have Someday, you have Huni, you have Licorice, who people were saying was one of the best tops in the world. You have so many guys, and you're like, okay, well, there's this guy who's never even been in the LCS. Of course he's going to get slammed, but he's gone toe to toe and has, been successful on, kind of multiple styles, playing tanks, bringing out the Riven. I think even if Riven is just getting banned every game, that's an advantage for his team and something that he's getting them. So for me, he's the clear rookie of the split, and I think maybe Vulcan could be in that consideration as well, but I think those other guys would have to do a lot of work to kind of change my mind.
I mean, rookie of the split is always weird for NA because we have 2 or 3 rookies per split, and it's you're choosing between 3 or 2 people, and usually the team that does better, the rookie on that team, is just gonna get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, and I think that's sometimes a shame if people only look at team results instead of individual contributions to those results, because it's much easier to look good when you're on a really good team.
Lastly, for coach of the split, I actually won this reward, and the split I won it. I don't think I did that much. It's such a hard award to give, because honestly, people don't know what coaches really do on the team, and you just give it to the team that won, I feel like, or the team that did the best in the regular season.
So I personally am not a fan of coach of the split as an award, because I just don't think I have enough insight. So I actually didn't even vote for it last time, because I just don't think that I have enough insight into all the coaches, right? So there's some coaches that I talk with, and I feel like I have a really good understanding of what they're contributing to the team, and some of the players will tell me what their coaches are or are not doing. But I can't say that I've ever, at any stage, had a fully clear image of what all 10 coaches are contributing to their team. And I feel like to really give a perfect award, you have to have that. Mm-hmm. I still think that there is valuable, though, in recognizing the efforts of a coach and recognizing the contribution that a coach has to a successful season. So that's kind of more how I see the award, is that it's if you're on the best team, the coach had something to do for that, and this is kind of just a nod to that, you know what I mean? But it is really tough, because sometimes coaches will get credit for draft decisions, but, well, if your team is way more flexible and your players can play every champion, then it's easier to draft appropriately, right? And maybe in some of the situations, I know I've had players tell me that, oh yeah, the coach is getting all this credit, but he doesn't even do the draft. The players do the draft, right? So it's difficult to give out for sure, I think. But I still think the award has value, because coaches should be acknowledged and their contributions should be acknowledged.
So, any final words for old school Azael World of Warcraft fans, just Azael the caster fan?
I guess thanks for following. Thanks for being a fan. I mean, if you're a WoW fan at this point, that was a long time ago. So I appreciate it. Definitely, it's funny how many people will still be like, I loved you when you were a warlock and stuff, and I'm just like, shit, dude, that was a while ago. But I mean, I haven't played WoW Pro in 4+ years, and some of the people. It's crazy. Some of the people who have followed me through my career from 2007 to now. So got some OG fans. Appreciate you guys.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed the interview, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much to Low-Key Community for making this interview happen. If you guys want to support them, the link is going to be down in the bio.